Hey, welcome to the newest episode of the Articulate Ox podcast. I am your host, Soma79. Thank you so much for joining me. My guest today is somebody who I knew I wanted to have on as soon as I started this podcast. My man, John Mooney, aka Trespassion. John is a urban explorer, photographer, I guess is the best way to put it. He kind of goes to places where a lot of people would never go, abandoned hospitals and Chernobyl and other crazy places and takes photographs of things that most of us will never see. His work is absolutely beautiful. The precision and technique he puts into it is pretty breathtaking, and he's full of so many good stories. I've known John for a long time. We used to be part of the same hip hop collective, Project Mayhem, back in the day. So I think he might be the fourth person from Project Mayhem that's already been on the podcast, and I'm guessing probably not the last. But yeah, definitely check him out at Trespassion. He's got prints for sale. We reference a book that he put out that I have since ordered, and I cannot wait to get my hands on that. I believe it's called Not Evidence, and the story about it is amazing. Definitely stick around for his story about Chernobyl, and I'd highly recommend tracking down on YouTube he has about 15 minutes of what looks like GoPro video that he had on his head while he was walking around Chernobyl and taking photographs, and it's a scene unlike anything you're really going to see. So I would definitely recommend checking that out, following John and supporting him in every way you can. So all right, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Mooney, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace. And hello, welcome to the newest episode of the Articulate Ox podcast. I am your host, Soma79. My ghost, I can't get anything right. My ghost today, because we can't see him, is Trespassion. Your real name's out there, right?
John Mooney.
John Mooney.
Trespassion on. Yeah, it's so funny because people in like the world I'm in now have no idea that part of my life even existed.
Yeah.
That
Well, you're a rapper, I think what you're gonna say.
Yeah, I was a rapper many years ago.
And you actually had a line that's one of my favorite lines from back in the day. In these streets where the police will beat you and go to donkeys, in a town where dodging bullets is easier than dodging junkies.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Because that little EP I made is still on SoundCloud, actually, like hidden on SoundCloud somewhere, and I'll go back to it every once in a while. And like I wasn't a necessarily good rapper, but I still enjoy my writing. I don't regret anything I ever really wrote, for the most part, that I recorded and put out like in the world. I still listen to that stuff and I'm like, yeah, I still have a lot of those beliefs and a lot of those like thinking, and like I know how much time and energy I put into that. It was like early before photography, and like now the energy is in that type of aspect of my life. I'll always enjoy writing it to some extent, but like going back and listening to that, like Cool to Be Dead and stuff like that, and like The Procedure, I'm like, some of that stuff's kind of corny, but it's still like, I don't know, I still kind of mess with it.
Yeah, I mean the song that I just called is Mental Mosh Pit was one of my favorite of yours, and like I listened to it again today, and like the thing that does stand out is we didn't really know what we were doing recording, like mixing back then. So there was the classic I'll just record myself twice saying the same thing, but it still sounded dope. Like your lyrics were on point, you were on beat, and I was like, this song still fucking kills.
You listen to that? I listened to the version of Mental Mosh Pit that was on my album, and it sounds like it's Donnie's song. Because he does my dubs on it, and
I've never heard that.
He's so prominent on it that it almost sounds like it's a song, but I enjoy that so much about it because he always brought so much energy to that song.
Oh, God.
Whether he was there or not, I feel like he
brought energy. He brings energy everywhere.
Everywhere. I absolutely love that kid.
His name has come up a bunch on this, and I talked to him about coming on at some point, but we're gonna figure it out.
I'm sure he'll be on. He loves to talk. I love the kid. He loves to hear his own voice.
I was talking with Cloak and Dagger about how, like, he probably would hate this, but like he'd be somebody, if he followed around with a camera for a reality show, like I would watch it. I'd watch him like go through his mail.
I'd watch him work in his garden. I'd watch him play with, hang out with the wife. I'd watch him make like a vegetarian dinner or whatever they do over there. I would definitely watch him. I'd watch the little conflicts he gets in about like the most random stuff.
the true passion he brings to everything he does. So
Absolutely, and that's what I love about him. You know,
yeah.
he's never gonna bite his tongue. He's gonna tell you what he thinks. He's gonna put it out there and take it or leave it.
Yeah, and he's been that person since back in those days too. Because we met through Project Mayhem. I think you're number 4 on my Project Mayhem bingo card of this podcast. I think because it's at
Nice.
Pilzion, Aztec, Skippy, Raw One, and I think that's it for now. But
You talked to Skippy?
yeah, I did. He actually executive produced my new album that's coming out next year, and he made it sound good, so
He
it's not like
he
shit.
may not even remember me, but I loved that kid. He was such a nice
Oh, I'm
dude.
sure he
Like,
does. Yeah, he's the nicest
uh,
dude.
yeah, just hearing that name just brings back so many memories. Like, wow.
That's another
I
one
hope,
because nobody calls him that anymore. Everybody calls him Ryan, but
yeah.
and now
Oh,
he
I'm
goes
sure.
by Upgrade too. That's what his like
Upgrade.
official
Okay.
name. Yeah,
Okay.
real full
Yeah, yeah,
name.
yeah.
But
But yeah, I always knew him through Judge as Skippy.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
because I met him. We went to he had my one of the first times I ever went to like a really nice studio was his spot in
yeah,
Boston that
yeah.
Judge brought me to, and I was just like
Holy crap!
taken back by that whole situation. I didn't even write anything that night. I don't think I was just so enamored with the whole being in there, and I basically watched Judge just record. I think a bunch of stuff for uncomfortable
Yeah, I
skin. I
think so.
think
Yeah, yeah. And that's something too. We were talking about Judge in a different episode where even back then, like I said to someone else that he was like the way he probably looked at KRS-One was the way like I looked at him because he had so much raw talent and his voice was so big, and you were just like, you're already so far ahead, you know?
he was. Oh, like he's up there. I think with Aesop Rock when it comes to like the most in depth with their writing. With like I'll listen to old Judge tracks that I
Yeah.
enjoyed for different reasons than I enjoy now. Where a lot of time, it's a lot with Aesop. It's so much that it takes like life experience to you to like come across something that you didn't come across 20 years ago, and you're like, oh, that's what that line meant. You know,
Right.
like it takes life experience to understand some things in a song that you haven't like crossed that bridge yet. And then you listen to the song after you've gone through that, and you're like, oh, I thought he was talking about this and liked it. You know,
Right.
it's like a lotus. There's just so many like many leaves to on like to tear back almost.
Right. Or sometimes he
And
was talking about one thing back then, but now time almost changes what it is. Like it's like you look
that's
at it
it.
from a different
It can go
perspective.
that way as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
perspective is a beautiful thing.
It is. So I was actually just watching some of your videos. Speaking of Aesop Rock, I saw one you shot, some footage you shot of him, where he did song off Impossible Kid, and then I don't know if it was Daylight or Nightlight. I was the sound.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny because so that was a show. I talked to someone at Rhymesayers like 2 or 3 times, like through email. This is a lot of the reason why I trespass. Same reasons. We were talking through emails, and I was like, I don't want to meet Aesop. I don't want to like. I'd love to meet Aesop, but that
Right.
wasn't why I
That
was
wasn't the
trying.
point. Yeah.
I just wanted press access so I could get my camera in the club. And they're like, yeah, absolutely, your work looks great, blah blah blah. Like, and then like 2 weeks before the show, I wasn't even trying to get a ticket. I already had a ticket. I just wanted the okay to get my camera in the club because a lot of times it'll be like, oh, no professional
Right.
cameras, which
Yeah.
means any camera with a changeable lens.
Oh, okay.
Um, so like a week or two before the show, I was just like calling to touch, emailing to touch base, and it went dark. I never heard a response. So I was like, fuck it, I'm sneaking my fucking picture and I'm sneaking my camera in the club. So I ended up like hiding it in my hat as the guy was like patting me down.
Was this the
And
Middle East?
no, it was different. It was a place in near Harvard.
Okay. All right. I can't think of where that is, but never mind. Yeah, because I was just thinking about
I saw Griselda there as well, and I can't think of the name of the place.
they because you'd be surprised at security in Cambridge. People who don't know going to a hip hop show, like going in the Middle East, it's like they frisk you more than almost any other place. I feel like it's not easy to
I
sneak
think
in a
that's
camera.
second to like Logan as
Yeah,
far
it is.
as far as like, but it's funny because like if I was ever like the cameraman is the perfect dude to be the drug dealer to the club because they
Yeah,
started looking through my bag and they're like, I don't want to go through all this shit. Like, just go, like, go do what you got to do. So, but this time I was not able to, like, I wasn't supposed to, I had no credentials. So I just like hid it in my new era as they were like pat me. I folded my like hat
yeah.
over it and they just patted me down to the fullest. And I got my camera in with one lens. And I'm like, all right. So then I shot that video with no light and then I shot a couple pictures, and then Rhyme Sayers ended up using one of my pictures as like on their page, and it ended up being in like their top 10 for like 2020 of their
Oh
like
wow.
images they used. And I'm like, dude, I could have got you like 400 other ones if you
If
just
you just
fucking
responded, yeah.
responded to a fucking email. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I swear away. It's fine.
Okay, all right.
It's yeah, and that's so much of it too. Is that like I mean, you send so many freaking emails, and you wonder if people ever read them or respond. And it's just it sucks
And I
waiting
only
for someone if
talk
you
that
don't.
way because I get so passionate about it, and I've
Yeah,
had that happen the same with like trying to get access to locations,
yeah,
and a lot of times with that, it's like ultimately getting someone to take time out of their day to allow you to do something that ultimately they don't care about. And I
right.
get that,
And may
like
even come back to bite them because we should mention what you do. You're urban photographer is the best way to put it, urban explorer, or
urban explorer. I don't try to like necessarily. I'm an urban explorer, I guess. I'm
yeah,
a photographer.
just broad
It
strokes.
feels,
Yeah,
yeah, broad
go
strokes. It
places
feels kind
probably
of
you're not supposed to be to
pigeonholing.
take pictures of things that other people will never see.
Yeah, I got into it through skateboarding photography, honestly, and then kind of went into it through that type of way. It was just like a random weekend trip with a buddy, and then that just became what we did every weekend.
Because skateboarding is a good first step into trespassing. I mean, essentially, like
Yeah, well, I mean, I think years and years of looking at Transworld and Thrasher and looking at, still to this
yeah,
day, some of my favorite photographers, would ultimately like high speed sports photography, and getting an idea of composition like through osmosis almost of
yeah,
just looking at them over and over again. And I think skateboarding photography is one aspect of sports photography, if I'm going to call it that, that I think they take a little bit more like artistic leniency with. You'll see more, more obtuse angles and different types of
yeah,
things than you're not going to see on like necessarily a Topps trading card, where I think
exactly.
a lot of sports photography lies. You'll see top high, like up high angles and stuff like that that you won't see on like most, baseball cards, hockey cards, stuff like that. It's always typical portrait shots. And that gave me like different views on the world and when I got into photography myself later, even if it, not even close to the same type of thing, but more of an approach on how to like view the world.
Yeah, it's definitely understandable. So what I remember you inspired me to really pick up my art because you did a project 365 years ago and where you did a picture every day for a year. And I seem to remember that was I think when you first landed on my radar that you were doing photography. And I think maybe the following year I was really trying to get better doing portraits. So I did one of those every
Yep.
day for a year. And it was
Yep.
definitely directly inspired from what you did. So what really brought you to
Appreciate
that
that.
part? And for me, it made me so much of a better artist. So thank you. So what did it do for you and what was your approach there?
So it was about, I want to say, probably about a year after I got my camera. And for the first year, I would go out skateboarding with my buddies at night, typically after work, and we had like different areas in Boston where we'd go bomb hills, and I would bring my kid. I always had a backpack on me because I was a hip hop kid,
Yeah.
Used to just have a like a notebook and spray cans in it, and now it had like a heavy ass camera and tripod and shit in it. So I was just like gearing myself up for that, I guess, with those years. But I would bring my camera out with me, and I would, as we would like, illegally at the time, smoking weed on the streets.
Yeah.
A thing of the past.
Times of the changed.
Yeah, thankfully, but it
Yes.
also strange. I think about the world that my son is going to grow up in, where weed is just going to completely, the norm. And I
Right.
once did a night in jail for a blunt. Like I'm
I
glad
know.
he's going to grow up into it, but it's just going to be a whole different view on it. I would take out my camera and I'd shoot like long exposures in the city as we just hung out. So after that first year, I was having a son, or I was having my first kid, and I was like, oh well, I thought it would be the best way to keep a camera in my hand at least once a day. I figured that was
Right.
good regiment. So I did it with my son, and in the first year, I definitely got a lot better when it came to portraits. Because that's ultimately what it was. I was doing crude artistic photography on the side, and learning a lot about that. And while I was working, I was also like watching different YouTube. I've probably paid for premium YouTube for the past 10 years
I
because
thought I was the only one.
no, there's a lot of us out there. The more people I say that to, the more I hear that, oh yeah, I had read, like I forget what
Yeah.
the
It
YouTube
was
Red or
YouTube
whatever.
Red was what it was called. Well, back when
Yep.
Cobra Kai was on there, and Rob
Yep.
Hubel had that Show You a Dead Guy show, which if you haven't seen,
Well,
check that out.
what is it, Rob? I love Rob Hubel.
He had a thing where he would like have a different comedian on for every episode. And he's like, I'm gonna bring you somewhere and show you a dead guy. And it was all obviously staged, but it was
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
awkward it would be if you were like Adam Pally and like Rob Hubel was like bringing you to some
Did
creek
you
and
ever
being
see
like, there's a
his?
dead guy.
I'm gonna completely fucking. Yeah, I'm gonna deep six what I
That's
was just
fine.
talking about. Have you ever seen that? There's a Rob Hubel like action comedy that he did where he's like then there's a whole, oh my god, when we debrief I'm gonna have to
Okay,
Google
cool.
that.
All right. I
But all
love
right,
stuff
so
like that.
for the yeah, and it's a really good one. He's like, it's like almost Mission Impossible, but it's like kind of like gory. I remember there being a lot of murders. It's
It's
like
not
a
NTSFST
no,
SUV, which is
no,
amazing. If you
that
haven't,
one's great too.
yeah.
I mean, he's a local guy.
Oh, yes, from like New Hampshire, I think. I think I looked him
Yeah,
up recently. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think he's maybe Massachusetts or New
Yeah,
Hampshire, but
I
he's
think
like
you're right. Maybe it's
no,
Massachusetts.
Northeast guy definitely. But I thought that was great, and he's hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, Hot Tub Time Machine is so good because of him, in my opinion. So yeah, I had my son, and I did a picture for him every day with my ex's help,
Yeah.
and well, because I spent my first Father's Day as a dad in Pripyat. I
In
was
where?
in Chernobyl.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Excellent. Yes.
So I think I'm pretty much a normal guy when it comes to everything else. But if you were to like give me a one of one, I think I'm the only, maybe one of the only people, maybe only American that could say I spent my first Father's Day as a dad in Chernobyl.
Oh yeah, yeah, and for
I
good
don't think it.
reason too. Like not not like stuck on a layover. Like
Yeah, no. I was there. I was actually like in. I was in the Modern Warfare 2 map, like looking at like the pool and stuff like that on my first Father's Day.
yeah, so that I was definitely gonna bring that up. There's an excellent video on YouTube on your page where you go through some of the stuff you saw there. We've talked a little bit about that over the years. How did that experience come together? How long were you able to be in there? And
I spent a long weekend in the Ukraine. Um, I had a buddy that was stationed in Italy, like a lifelong friend, and he was going to do it, and we had always kind of joked about doing it. And then he, as a gift for me having my first son, offered to pay half of my airfare. So then I just kind of jumped on the opportunity. I spent 36 hours in the air flying, and probably about 48 to 50 on the ground in Kiev. It was just one day in Pripyat, one day in Kiev, and then 2 days pretty much of travel. But I a day, 2 days in Kiev, one day in Pripyat, and then the rest was flying. It was crazy. But I just basically took pictures the whole time. I didn't really do much else. I wasn't at a party or anything like that. It was
right.
just it was a really quick trip.
I'm
I,
sure that Chernobyl doesn't really have much of a nightlife anyway.
Oh, I think it does. It seemed like a pretty wild
Yeah.
place, honestly. I definitely could have gotten into a lot of trouble there if I wanted to, but I was also expecting my first son. I had my first son. I was low on funds. It was not
Yeah.
not
It's
a
also the
lavish
worst place
trip.
not a great place to end up in a foreign jail or something.
No. What was crazy is when I got back, I was literally watching, like, probably 6 months later. It was almost the same type of conflict we had recently, where they were invaded by Putin and they were shooting people on the streets, like streets I'd walked 6 months earlier as an American. If timing had been different, I would have got stuck there.
Yeah.
It was just lucky how the timing worked out.
So with your trip to Chernobyl, was it? I mean, I don't know how legitimate you can go to Chernobyl, I guess is my question.
You could do tours. I did
Okay.
tours of it. So you had to go through, you get 8 hours basically the tour is, but you spend about 2.5 of them going through checkpoints and stuff like that, and different, I'm sure, fake radiation scans with guy, like
Yeah.
everything's fine. You're good. Just go through. But
Right.
yeah, you spend a bunch of time going through that, and then our tour guide was kind of like jaded and didn't really talk much. Luckily, I had like done a bunch of research and my entire life before that, and knew like pretty much a lot of the story. But yeah, it was a crazy trip. It went quick. I wish I did 2 days, because you can do more. I just didn't have you can do night trips as well. I've seen some great like night, like Milky Way shots over the Ferris wheel and shit like that. It just looks incredible. Bucket list type of shots. But yeah, that was right into my, and I shot it on like 3 cameras to go, like such a basic setup, like um none of the lenses I have today, like no wide angle lenses. It was all tight.
Yeah.
I couldn't use a tripod as well. They wouldn't let me bring it. So for the past like 8 years, I'd say 90% of the shots you see that I've done are on a tripod.
Right.
You know, they're usually like 5 to 7 images all put together. So the lighting is right across the entire scene. So I
Right.
don't have like big white blown out windows or really
And
dark
I've seen you shoot
shadows.
before. You're not somebody who will shoot 1,000 photos and try to find the good one later. You're someone who wants to get the good photo and know he has it, it seems.
Typically, which I think is not necessarily a good thing later, because I look back at a lot of things and I'm like, damn, I wish I shot that
Yeah.
more.
All it would
You
have
know,
taken
like
was a few more of these.
yeah, a few more of those. I spend a lot more time like walking around with my camera in my bag and like trying to find my shot. But usually once my camera's out of my bag and on my tripod, I'm shooting a bunch. You know,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get everything done. So like I have camera straps on on my backpack thing. So I try and always have my camera out. If my camera's out of my bag, I'm so much more likely to use it.
Yeah.
So I have like certain things that like I'll just have it hanging from my shoulder strap. So I'll use it more. I do a lot of times leave it in my bag, which is the problem. I'll walk around Boston for hours and not take a picture, just waiting for the one shot to hit me, and then I'll take a bunch of shots. But after I did my first 365, I started another 365 that was going to be all landscape. And then I finished that 365, but in the middle of that, I got pregnant with my daughter and then realized I had to do a third 365 in the portion of like 4 years. So I
Wow.
may do another 365 at some point, but I've taken a couple of years off from them because
It's
it
exhausting.
it was great. I don't regret anything, but I didn't think about it going into it that if I do it with my first son, I'm a
Right.
bad dad if I don't
Right.
do it
That's
for any
yeah,
of the
there'll be questions
other.
later in life.
Yeah, if I didn't do it for my daughter, I'm a huge piece of shit, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was good. It's funny looking at my daughters because the pictures are definitely elevated from what they were on my sons. They were a lot cruder and a lot less understanding of photography rules that I believe are broken, but are
Right.
necessarily rules that I somewhat adhere to at this point, knowing some of the things I do about how the brain will
Yeah. I mean,
take
these
in
be
an
broken on
image.
purpose, not on accident, you know.
Yeah, exactly. There are
Generally
reasons.
speaking.
Yeah, reasons to break those rules for art for um artistic elevation.
Yeah, it is fun. I did a second 365, which I didn't really share many of them, but I always had a trouble drawing from my imagination. Like I could always copy something, but I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do it every year, every day this year. I'm gonna draw something from my imagination.
I
And
still have that Method Man one you drew, man.
oh, sweet, thanks. Yeah, I love that one. That
Yeah,
was
that
an
one was
amazing
great.
photo.
Thank you.
Um,
That's one
but
of my favorite live shots I've taken.
yeah. So how did you get into I mean the hip hop aspect of it? Like because I know I saw there's a picture of Slick Rick you did that blows me away. I'm a huge Slick Rick fan. Um, we came up in the same hip hop scene in Boston, and how did you get into taking those photographs?
A lot. Um, that was through another photographer friend. I mean, luckily, through like photography, I've met a lot of like videographers and photographers through it. Um, that was through another videographer, Scott Sando, and he hit me up
Oh,
one
I know that
night.
name. I think we're friends on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, Sando's awesome. Such good people. Like Rose Glenn is like a brother to me at this point. Um, I feel so lucky because a lot of these people will send me like rough drafts and be like, "What do you think?" And I get
Yeah.
to see like some incredible stuff like before it comes out, and it's just it feels like a blessing a lot of times. But Sando hit me up and was like, "What are you doing? I have an extra press pass to um, the Art of Rap tour,
Oh
I think it
yes, the
was."
one that Ice-T put on.
Yeah, yeah. So I got to meet Ice T and Coco. I met,
Awesome.
dude. I got a picture of Rakim and Raekwon exchanging numbers to do a song later through a mirror in the back room. I saw them talking, was kind of listening, a
Oh
fly on
my
the wall
God.
type of thing. And there was a mirror just like in the right position. So like it wasn't over the shoulder, so I wasn't seeing any of their phone stuff, but watching them interact and talk about doing a song later and watching Raekwon get Rakim's number, I like just popped a quick picture and it was just kind of like a moment that like
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I had
But
business being in the room for, but it
right.
felt like I had no business in the room for.
Yeah.
Um, Rakim is, at Mount Rushmore of hip
God love
hop
Eleven
for me.
Soup. Yeah.
Like I think the was it 17th Letter is probably top 10 album for me of all time.
Yeah, as it
Um,
should be.
so and meeting him was amazing. He was one of the most down to earth dudes that like his time was obviously valuable, so he's pulled all over the place. But
Right.
when you had his attention in the short like 20 seconds, 30 seconds I got with him, he was the most down to earth dude. I enjoy getting to take the pictures. So I don't
Yeah.
get to be in a lot of the pictures,
Right.
which is fine by me because that's not what I'm there for. Like I'm as much as I'm a fan, I'm there to also do a job. And I think or do my part, I guess, in the art, and it's to
Right.
document it for others to enjoy. Um, he was one of the few that I asked to get a picture with. And as I was taking a picture with him, I put my hand down to like kind of my side, so I wasn't holding up my camera. And he goes, "No, you hold up that camera. You show people what you do." And it was such a
It's
unreal rock him answer.
yeah.
It was perfect. It was the most like amazing thing I'd ever heard. And I had already shot those Method Man shots and stuff like that before that, and it was just like I don't know. It was just such a moment for me, honestly.
It's amazing. They always say don't meet your heroes, but every once in a while you meet your hero, and even if it's for like 10 seconds, they prove they're just like, oh, by the way, they dunk in those 10 seconds and like walk off. You're like, all right, that's like you drop that pearl, you probably drop 50 of those on people a day. It's like you are
Yeah,
who it's like you are Rakim is you are who we want you to be, you know?
he couldn't. He like just when you thought the man couldn't have got any cooler, he went
Yeah.
and did something like this. It was just so. It was amazing. And I had bit like Ghostface was also there. It was a Raekwon and Ghostface, and I had wanted to meet Ghostface in my entire life. That was my brother's favorite rapper.
Yeah.
Um, Supreme Clientele was my brother's favorite
Oh,
album,
Buck
and
50.
just
That song is just oh man, I love
scientific.
it.
My hand kiss it. Robotic, lipstick,
Yeah.
optimistic. You probably missed it. Watch me dolly dick it, Scotty Wally copper tip me. That oh man,
The words you
that's
walk better be the words you talk body you.
so I listened to that so much with my brother. So I've always wanted to meet Ghost, and it was not his fault at all. I don't blame him at all. He was obviously rushed out of the situation, but I didn't get a chance to meet him, and it always killed me because I met Raekwon, and Raekwon was amazing. I took a picture with him too. He was all over the place. I took a shot with him and Rakim, and I felt like staying outside the place trying to meet
Yeah.
Ghostface, and I couldn't because he just got to walk past me, and I didn't want to I couldn't.
Yeah.
He had a supreme move to his step, and there was no way I was walking in front of him to try
Yeah.
and get a moment with him. But
Sometimes you see those people and you're like, it's just not that day.
it's not the time.
I
It's like if somebody's eating or something like that, I'm not going to interrupt
though I
a
will say
meal.
I did bother one person while they were eating, and they were actually glad that I did. I bumped in. It was like maybe 8 in the morning. I was in a pickle in Waltham, and I saw a guy that I swear was RJD2 eating breakfast, and I'm like, why would he be here? And on the way out, I'm like, dude, I hate to do this, but are you RJ? And he was like shocked to be recognized, and he looked like he was happy to be recognized in front of the guy with him. So I
It
think
was
I
really
made him.
him.
Yeah, it was him, and because I was
Well,
utterly
I think that's a different level because like I know who RJD2 is.
yeah, he probably doesn't get recognized very much. And it was funny because I was sitting with my girlfriend and I Googled the picture,
Put
and the
two.
picture that came up looked like it was taken like 5 minutes before like this guy walked in the
Yeah,
door. Like it was so
he's
I'm
wearing
like,
the
then I had
same
to ask.
outfit.
Yeah, I was like, I'm like, it's gonna ruin me if it's not him. And he was like super excited to be recognized. Like,
That happened with me in oh, what's he's a lot more known now. Whose Atmosphere is why can't I
oh,
think of his
Ant?
Ant.
Yeah.
Ant was outside. It was you won't believe how much fun we're having tour.
Oh,
Ant was out front.
that's my favorite Atmosphere album. I love that album.
Yeah, God Loves Ugly will always hold a
Yeah,
place
for that
in my
too.
heart because I think at the time I heard it, I think you're that's probably his best complete album. But
Well, I think God Loves Ugly. Yeah, that was my first Atmosphere that I really got into, and it's
but
raw.
I think You Can't Believe is a more complete album.
Yeah, yeah, it's
I
bigger. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah, you can tell. But Ant was out front. They were on tour doing that, and it was out front, and literally the whole place is filled to see them. But nobody knows who Ant is because he's not on the cover.
yeah. And Ant kind of looks a little
He's
like at times like a little like Carl from Aqua Teen, but like kind of
Yep.
better
Oh yeah.
dressed. Like
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
blending
exactly.
in.
And so he was out front just hanging out, and I walked up to him kind of quietly, and Hectic was there. It was funny, and Hectic didn't recognize him either. And I had known him because I had watched the sad clown,
Yeah,
the whatever
bad
the
dub or
long,
whatever.
the long video they made that was ridiculous. I had watched that before, and I walked up to him like, "Hey, you Ant?" And he's like, "Yeah, man. Like, you're the first person to recognize me." And I was like, "Oh man, it's great to see you." The production of it. Like, I just talked to him and like praised him because that album was great, and he was a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it was just funny because after I did the Hectic, was like, "Hey man, like, you're Ant." Like, it was, and that he like talked his ear off just like I did. It was fun to be that. And meeting Idea was also incredible. That
Oh,
was before I was a photographer, but meeting him out, he was a By the Throat tour, and he was out front smoking a cigarette. Him smoking a cigarette blew my mind. I was like, "You smoke cigarettes
that I
with
do see people like that smoke cigarettes.
that breath control? How the
I know.
what?"
It's funny. I was just talking to Pilsy last week about this. That our biggest musical regret was that Pilsy once had a conversation with Idea about doing a Mike Monarchy song, and he said, and this was maybe like
It was probably
15.
at this. Oh, it was probably at this show.
It might have been. It could have been. I thought for some reason it was at Rock the Bells, but I could be totally
Oh, it might
making
have
that
been
up.
there. Right? It might have been
And
there.
with the money he quoted was money that back then sounds like what probably sounded,
Insane, but
yeah. It was like $1,500, and it was like and a beat, and it was and with an idea with an abilities beat. And like in hindsight, I'm just like, can I
with
go
an
back and
ability speed,
yeah,
like
it's and it would have been like $500 each for me, narcotics and pills. I don't know why, but like it just didn't. That's my biggest regret musically is that never happened. But
it was so funny because meeting him, I was talking to him. I was like, "Dude, you changed the way I looked at the world on the what was the thing that was on
Oliver
HBO?
Hart.
The Blaze Battle. I saw him
Oh
on the Blaze
yes.
Battle when I was in high school. It was on
Oh
HBO 2
God.
at like 11 o'clock at night one night, and it was a white kid just destroying anyone that came in front of him on HBO.
Yeah.
And I was
It,
like, this was, I think, before, it might have been right as like Slim Shady LP was coming out. And like, I don't know, people nowadays don't understand how different the world was as a white hip hop fan
right.
at that
Yeah.
time.
It was. It
Like,
was.
there was no legitimacy in that world whatsoever.
We were.
Like, you
I
had
was talking
no
about this with
business
someone else, where it was like we'd be made fun of for the music we listened to. I was
just
like be calling
listening
like
to
the
it.
W word,
Yeah.
which I only call that because I don't want to, give it the strength of saying it. But like that was like, I mean, that was like from like 91 for me until like 2000, until like Chronic 2001 came out, to where like I
Yeah,
was called
yeah,
that like every day.
absolutely. And I had gotten into it through watching skate videos. I remember hearing Exhibit Paparazzi in a 411 I watched, and being like, and I was so into like what my parents had shown me before that. Like, I listened to the Rolling Stones, the
Yeah.
Doors, Fleetwood Mac, and all that. And I'm like, what is this through a skate video? And a lot of my music in the beginning was through skate videos, like what people skated to. So I got my Van Morrison and stuff like that through there, and like Prince, and like we're just all over the place, a really eclectic view of music. But I remember seeing this one montage in 411, and it was Exhibits Paparazzi. And then I went out and found the album at Quincy Records and Tapes. And then I was just like, what is this? It was like finding like Willy Wonka's like
Yeah. One. It's just.
chocolate
Yeah.
factory in a section in a music store, and just being like, what is this? What is this? What is this? Licking every wallpaper flavor.
Yeah.
And until, like, as weird as it is, Slim Shady and that type of moment in music, you felt like you had no place being there. You
Right.
felt like such an outcast in it. Like, I don't know if that's my white
You're
guilt or what
almost
it
in.
is.
You almost felt like you were in the way a lot of times.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I shouldn't have this because someone else should have this instead of me.
Right.
You know, um, but after that, you felt a lot more comfortable in that space. There was some
Right.
legitimacy to our
And I would
to
say too, like the one I think I remember when Eminem really became big, everyone's like, well, now white rappers are going to be huge, but that didn't happen right away because it's like the first ones, like Bubba Sparks, didn't really blow up. Like Everlast did, but he wasn't really as a rapper. And like people like Idea and stuff like that, like they
yeah, but
they gained an audience, but they didn't blow up.
idea never made it to like unfortunately, like, super
Yep,
prominence.
he didn't.
Unfortunately,
I mean,
There's,
Atmosphere is probably the most famous of, like, them and Aesop Rock are probably the most famous of
I would
that.
say Atmosphere is the closest to a household name you'd get in that type of space.
Especially because they appeal to he has he appeals to the female crowd more than a lot of
Yeah,
others do.
Logic I think would be the
Oh,
second
yep,
to Eminem when it would
yep.
come to it. I think Mac Miller is probably
Oh
the
God,
most
man.
and I got into him like right as Swimming was coming out. I got into him way late, unfortunately.
I didn't really get into him until after he passed. I listened to some of his stuff a little bit, but like I
What's
just
what's what's
now I have
crazy is
all this stuff on vinyl. It's
I
amazing.
got I got into him right before he passed away. I had the chance to shoot him, and I went to Philly instead to shoot a bando. I went to Philly to shoot an abandoned church because it was abandoned for a short period of time, and I went down to Philly to shoot that, and I wasn't into Mac Miller at the time. And I came back, and it was right when Swimming came out, and I got really into him, and I was like, "This kid's incredible." Next time he comes around, I'm shooting him, and that's all I was thinking. And then within like I don't know a month, he had passed away, and that was one of the first in a while that like a someone I didn't know really like hit me hard, like crazy. Such a talented dude.
Just it's just his you can his presence alone, just hearing him like giggle on a song makes him like as an ad lib gives you a feeling. Like he just has this
Yep.
ability to fill the room with his energy, even just through records. Like
Just transcendent in his music and just such a different way than most other artists I've ever heard.
yeah, the book Most Dope that came out about him in the past like maybe 6 months to a year is really good. If you haven't read that, people should definitely check that out. Yeah, it's just remarkable. I think the mistake I made with him is that I was like that crusty old hip hop head that was like, oh, was it Lord for he was like a Lord Finesse beat and didn't really give him credit, and I was just wrote him off for like a decade after that, like an asshole.
I did the exact same thing. I remember hearing him and thinking he was another Asher Roth.
Right. Yep.
That's
Yep.
exactly the box I ignorantly put on him.
Yeah.
Um, and it was all me just being an idiot. And not being able to get into him until way later.
Yeah. I had a similar thing with so I just finished an album that I mentioned before that Skippy and I did, and I was able to get people like Cool Keith on it and Raz Cass and Elza and Esoteric and stuff and like Young Dirty Bastard. But I was trying to get Shock G from Digital Underground on it, and I had talked to his manager a couple times, and she was like, he doesn't do a whole lot anymore, but put your best proposal together and put it in front of him. And then I was working on it, and he passed away like within a few
Oh
weeks of that. And I
man.
was like, that to me, like he was such a huge influence on me. He was the one who really showed me that, well, there is this world of hip, like, we grew up where we weren't, like I said, we weren't really accepted in the hip hop world. But if you
Yep.
looked at someone like Digital Underground, you could feel they were going out, they were already just being wild. Like you could see how they might not even be accepted in some corners of hip hop. At least in my head, you're like, are they really gonna, like, if they were in the same room with NWA, like what would happen? Like in my like,
Yeah.
set. But like, and so it was easier for me to go, oh, you can rap about anything. Like you can do a song about nose jobs, you can do a song about the Humpty Dance, and it's like that to me was my way of going, okay, I can. It's a path in for me, and
Yeah.
and then to go on and have such an influence on Tupac's career, you're so multi-talented. But I digress. Um, so I meant to dig this up today, and I realized I thought I had ordered this, but I ended up not. You put a book out a few years ago. If there's any more copies available, I'd love to order one. Um, is that still kicking around?
Yeah, it's so that is through like a third party. They print them as they're ordered, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the cover is the evidence bag that they kept my camera in as evidence for a year and 6 months, as I was charged with felony trespassing by the MBTA.
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into the get indicted hotline, but I'm also all ears for any sort of stories like that you want to share.
Oh, I got plenty of them, unfortunately. So I was running train lines after hours in Boston, and I got caught in an area I wasn't supposed to, and they threatened me with terrorism charges
Ugh,
because through the Patriot Act they added something where if you get caught on rooftops or in tunnels, it's an act of terrorism.
sweet
It's
Jesus.
infiltrating the infrastructure of a major metropolitan or some bullshit like that. So they charged me with felony trespassing that I end up having to plead down to misdemeanor breaking and entering. So I have a B&E on my record now because I took a picture of a tunnel I wasn't supposed to be in. But upon getting out, they gave me my camera back, and it was in an evidence bag that just said John Mooney Canon camera, and that was it. And
This is
like
getting
SD
used.
card, SD card. I'm like, well, that's fucking amazing. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
definitely keeping that.
Silver
Like,
lining.
evidence is a camera. What are you talking about? So I altered it a little bit. I took the officer's name off of it and changed the case numbers and stuff, and I made it so the book's name is Not Evidence, and it's all evidence from crimes I've committed. Or in the prologue, I wrote that I purchased all the images from a homeless man at Harvard Station, and the stories were told to me by him, and I accept no responsibility for anything in the book. I'm just a passer of knowledge from a homeless man I met in Harvard train
That'll
station.
hold up.
No. It's not a cop out or anything.
No, I
Uh,
mean, do you? How often does that? I mean, because I mean, obviously,
I've been arrested probably 5 or 6 times for trespassing. My thing is, all right, yes, am I breaking? This has always been my issue. This has been my issue my entire life. I see it from both sides. Since I've been a skateboarder, since I did graffiti, like, yes, I'm grinding on not my property. I'm defacing this. I shouldn't be doing it. There's a lot worse things I could be doing in the world.
right, right,
And my defense, in growing up in Boston as in the early 90s, 2000s, there wasn't anywhere else for me to go. I didn't have a choice. They had to chase me out of Copley every day. They had to chase me out of Financial, throwing myself downstairs. There was nowhere
yeah,
else for me to go. They didn't give me any options. I didn't have any choice. They had to arrest me in the train lines when I was painting graffiti because I didn't have anywhere else to go. You know, there wasn't anywhere
yeah.
else for me to go. Was I doing the wrong thing? Yeah, whatever. I didn't have any options. Now I'm doing the least amount of that. I'm typically just I very rarely, if never, do I have to actually physically break into a spot.
Right,
Break and entering doesn't necessarily mean you broke into a spot. You're just in there. If you're
right.
inside, it's breaking and entering. If you're outside, it's trespassing. If you're inside, it's breaking and entering. Um, so you don't have to break in to break and enter. You can just have an open window and know the window that's open and get charged for that.
Right.
Typically, I'm just going into a spot I'm not supposed to be in and getting caught. I'm not defacing anything. I'm not breaking anything. I'm just taking pictures. And if I didn't get caught in the act, they would never even know I was there.
Right.
It's just bad timing. It's a game of cat and mouse, and the mouse doesn't live forever. The cat has to eat.
Right.
You know, that's ultimately what it is.
It's funny too because some of the places it makes me wonder why people like I know why you're there, but it makes you wonder why there's people even monitoring those areas at this point.
Well, 9 times out of 10, it's a place that might have a little historical value, or the value of the property flat isn't worth the cost of abatement to remove the asbestos that is there, that you can't just knock down. You have to
Right.
take out all the asbestos before you demolish. And asbestos abatement is expensive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they'll just let them sit there and rot into themselves and watch that happen rather than pay for abatement, demolish it, and then put up condos and no parking.
Yeah.
That's what they do everywhere, like
Yeah.
waiting for the place to crumble into itself so they can put up an Amazon fulfillment center.
Yeah.
It's
So they
all the
can build
world's
a
gonna be.
warehouse for robots to buy things for other robots.
I'm such an old guy at this point, but like that's what it is.
Yeah, that's true.
They'll demolish it and put an Amazon there.
Yeah.
That's the world we live in.
Are you surprised that like one thing that blows my mind when I look at your stuff is how much stuff actually gets left behind? Like, you go into these rooms and I actually gotta remember there was one that you went into where it seemed like a totally abandoned building. Then you turned to right and the room was like pristine white.
Oh, all right. So that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. That was in New York on Long Island at this place, Kings Park. It's a well-known
Yep,
abandoned
that sounds familiar.
hospital. It's huge. Um, it was in a building 93, which is short of 20-story high building. A large, I want to say it's like 16 or 17 stories. I don't have to get exactly. But anyway, that was an art installment by a
Oh,
couple that like a couple of artists that live in New York. They went there like every day for a weekend. They found different like beds and stuff like that in there, painted the entire room white, everything in it white, and made it look like a brand new hospital room in a
Wow.
building that has graffiti on every other inch of it. So I watched it on Instagram, and I had already sworn to never go back there because I'd been there 3 times and it was just beat to crap. It wasn't very interesting for someone like myself.
Right. It probably been
Um,
overshot. Like, people that are really
Overshot.
into that
Just
art have seen it all.
there's only so many swastikas and penises that you can Photoshop out of an image, and
Yeah.
it gets old. Um, but I can't tell you how many shots I saw of just the room itself. So I'm sitting at my house in Weymouth at the time, and I'm like, why isn't anyone shooting the hallway, which is covered in graffiti, which
Yeah. The
its
context.
yeah, you need to, if you don't know where in the world it is, it's just a hospital room.
Right.
You know it's an abandoned building and it's a complete different hit, like that was the whole reason it was interesting in my opinion. So I'd watched it for like 3 weeks online. I'm like, why isn't anyone shooting this fucking hall? Because I knew it was in Kings Park. They'd show like the door frame.
Right. But
I'm
not
like,
like that. You
but
knew there's
not
more.
the context. I'm like, you need to show what. And at the time, my camera was in evidence, mind you. So I went, and so the people, after they finished, they locked up the room. It had like a heavy duty state New York State hospital lock on it, and someone had rubber cemented the door closed, so
Oh,
you couldn't get in. You could shoot it through the window. So I met my buddy Eddie, and he came with a not a blowtorch, like something that they use to do dabs, like a blowtorch
oh
type
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
He has a state key, so he came, met me there, blowtorched out the lock, and let me use his camera because he had a wide angle I could use to shoot it on a card so I could go home and edit it. It was the only time my images on that are the only images you've ever seen me shoot on a Nikon camera, because
Not
he
a
let me
fan.
use it. He let me. No, I could care less.
Oh
Honestly,
yeah,
I'm not
you
that
went a
guy.
different path and like
I
never
I have
strayed.
Canon. I have Canon. Well, the thing is, once you invest in
Yeah,
lenses,
yeah.
you're
Then
kind
it's
of
like,
stuck. I
yep,
have, 10. Well, at one point had, $6,000 worth of Canon lenses. So it's like I'm
yeah,
not gonna buy a Nikon body with all the nice glass there.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so I used his camera, and I was able to get in and actually shoot the room and in its context where it is, because that was the coolest thing about it. And within 2 months later, some kids, he locked it back up, but some kids got in there and set a fire in the middle of it and ruined it.
It's
It
so that must
that
be
was like three
infuriating.
that was like 3 years ago, and it probably lasted about 2 to 3 months after.
That's just so that must drive you crazy because it's obviously that's why there are people trying to get people out of these areas is because obviously it's illegal to trespass, but people are worried about fires that are gonna take down forests and kill people and wildlife and houses, and they're worried about just people I guess committing crimes and stuff like actual serious violent crimes and stuff there. How frustrating is that when you see people that don't treat the areas with the respect that you do?
So my thing is, it drives you crazy if you let it. Um, my, 9 times out of 10, it's not the explorer that got a pin from another photographer. It's a local kid that found the spot and had a can of spray paint, like some 12 to 14-year-old that lives close by. It's
Right.
very rarely a kid that's driving 4 hours to go there that's going to trash it. I will say that in this quote unquote community of urbex photographers, I have probably encountered more toxic people in this than I have in any other of my artistic ventures.
Why do
I
you think that is?
I wish I could explain it to you. I don't get it. Um, an abundance of time on their hands, in my experience. I don't know. It's very rarely the other urbex photographer that's destroying a spot. It's usually fires are 9 times out of in my opinion, usually the property owner, because it's cheaper to burn the place down than
Yeah.
it is to abate. Can of match is a lot cheaper than abatement, in my opinion.
Yes.
But people don't want to have that conversation.
Right.
uh, Or if it's like graffiti and stuff like that, it's usually some kid, it's usually some local kid that just came across it. It's very rarely, somebody coming across. Um, and if you really wanted to shoot it that bad, you would have got there before,
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
and you can't get to every spot. There's some fucking incredible spots in Tokyo I'd love to go to. I'll probably never get there. Doesn't mean I have to shit on someone that does get there. A lot of times it's people just jealous of other people doing stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
That's the attitude too that I think really
that
holds a lot of people
sucks.
back.
What other people eat doesn't make me shit.
Right.
So I applaud other people doing stuff. I was getting into photography right around when Instagram started. So when I got good at photography and started doing it more, people would be like, "Why doesn't Instagram drive you nuts? Everyone thinks you're a photographer now." And I'm like, that doesn't.
Right. I
If
hate
anything,
that
that
mentality.
helps. That helps me because if I'm that good of a photographer, I'm going to stand out.
Yeah.
If I'm not that good of a photographer, I won't stand out. That's fine. Like I'm okay with not being a good photographer. I get enjoyment out of it regardless. I get my artistic fix through it. And you can look at a million of different pictures to get inspiration from, like see what other people are doing. Like, no two pictures are ever going to look identical. You can
Right.
go to the same spot, the same time of day, the next day, it's going to look different. It'll never look the same as that person going there at that time. It might look almost identical, but there'll be differences. There'll be a blade of grass differently, something different about something. No two pictures will be the same. So I don't care if you set your tripod up in the same divots as where mine was. It's gonna look different in
Right.
some way.
Which, as somebody who's like shot film and stuff in the past, like has tried to go back and get pickup shots of things, that is an unfortunate reality. No matter even how hard you try to be like, oh, make sure this is the same and the door is the same way.
Nope.
It's always, paying
You
close
got to
enough
try
attention.
and make that look the same through the color grading and stuff like that. There's
Yeah.
like ways to make it kind of look, but it won't look it. In my opinion, you can digitally alter it to make it seamless, but I don't think, in
You're not gonna
my
fool
opinion,
everybody.
I don't think it'll ever be like I said, it'll be pretty close, but it won't
Right.
be identical. It won't
Yep.
be identical. Well, because I have people that will get, because you go to symmetrical works in what I do. So typically there's in a room, there's maybe 4 shots.
Mhm.
You want to shoot from the middle of the room, you want to line everything up. And that's where I've gotten bored a lot of times in photography, is like you find the cool abandoned room, you sit in the center of it, you line up everything exact, you take a picture, you find the next center of the room. It's just finding the center of the room like over and
Right.
over again. So you start to get in these ruts where you're just shooting everything identical. And
Mhm.
it's like, is that really it? Am I just going through the motions, or am I actually like working my camera and finding? So I've been trying to think more outside the box within
Right.
the past 2 years
Because you
during
mentioned even like the growth you saw between your first child and your second child in terms of photographs is like
Mhm.
you always want to see that. Like it's like you
Yep.
want to be seeing that growth your entire career. Like if you're just seeing the same photos over and over again, then it is easy. It is easy to slide out of practice. It's easy to slide into even depression over things like that. So
Oh,
you got to keep
absolutely.
challenging yourself.
Well, I mean, the way I've while I was working and getting in photography, I watched thousands and thousands of videos on YouTube on B&H, which is a camera store in New York, but they also have hundreds of hours of photography symposiums on their YouTube where they have some of the best photographers in the world and talk about, composition or lighting or, the use of telephoto versus wide angles. And they'll go on and on and on for 4 hours talking about photos.
Yeah.
I've probably gone through all of them 2 to 3 times, like when I was learning, I was taking everything in. Um, and it comes to a point, I think, of after about 4 to 5 years of using a camera where you just know it. It
Right.
becomes an extension of you. It's you. There's nothing on that camera that you don't understand, and that's when you can really get down to it and
Yeah.
really get into the fun aspects of photography, the less technical, the compositions, the playing with how your wide angle will use this curve of this like bench versus, all right, I have to make sure the lighting's here, and like that becomes second nature, and use the world around you and how you frame it a lot differently in that time after the grace period of learning it.
Yeah.
And then after that, like you find something that works, and then it's easy to get in a rut of that. That's where I
Right.
got for a while. You just find what works. All right, this is what people like. I'll never understand what people like, honestly, because
Oh yeah, same way.
I'll put out something. I'll work on a shot for hours and be like, all right, this is awesome. It won't do anything. I'll put up a shot that I think is, a throwaway. I just want to put something up today. It'll go through the roof.
Yeah. And even for me, that was a big thing, is accepting that I'm not objective over my own work was a big thing. That was a very freeing part of my artistic journey, where you're just like, okay, well, I'm not always gonna know what people are gonna like, and that's totally fine. And it's like, if I release everything that I like, certain things will hit, and it's hard. Oh, is my
Yeah,
internet going unstable?
mine was, it froze for a second.
Oh, I think I'm back. Stupid internet.
All right. Yeah, I'll never understand what's probably my um best shot that people will like is on a hard drive somewhere that will never see the light of day. Like my kid will find it on a like roll of film that I haven't developed yet or something.
Yeah.
Like that and something that I think is a throwaway, everyone will think is the best thing ever.
Right. Which actually was they say about art, is that once you make it, it's no longer really yours.
No,
So
it's a cultural thing. It belongs. It's owned by the world to interpret how they want, and
yeah.
I agree with that
People that
wholeheartedly.
are too precious about their own, like there's two people, like I don't like when people aren't serious enough about their own art, where they kind of just spend their whole time saying, oh, I suck, whatever, whatever. But people that are too precious about it are also kind of like, you really got to walk that fine line.
It's a fine line because I I hate to say I'm a good photographer, but I've
I'll say
also
it. You're a
been.
great photographer.
I appreciate that, but I'm also I can be a better photographer.
Right.
I will always be being a better photographer because I always strive to do that. Um, it's and if I wasn't a good photographer, I've been doing it the better part of, almost 12 years at this point. If I wasn't a decent photographer at this point, I should probably hang it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like honestly, I've put enough time into it that I better be good. Like, or at least inept enough to get through it. So but I still enjoy it. I still love doing it every chance I get. I try to do it every day when I can.
Yeah, it's funny. You sort of mentioned too something that I was talking to Pillsy about he was talking about how he spent basically it's a long period of time just studying how to make beats and basically just kind of accepting nothing. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to go, and I did that with drawing. It's like it's hard for a lot of people to really just in their head go, okay, I really know 0.5% of what I not want about that, and just building yourself up from scratch. But everybody I know who's done that has gotten so much better at whatever their craft is.
It's a tough pill to swallow to realize you suck at something.
Right.
But
And
it's
what goes with that too is that even if you're good at it, a lot of people, like we talked about Judge, where it seemed like he was almost magical at what he did because he was so far ahead of us. And it's like you almost think, well, it's not even that special if I have to work, because you kind of want to believe you're special in some ways as an artist, but you're like, oh, this is like anything else where you just kind of just keep working at it till you're good. And then you realize,
yeah,
oh, that's what makes you special, is having
yeah,
that
it is the
attitude.
hard work. Yeah,
Right.
it is the hard work behind it. But what came first?
Right.
A lot of times it's what came first, the chicken or the egg. Was the talent there? Was the hard work what brought the talent out?
Right. Because doing
It's
the
the
hard work is really hard when you suck. It's a lot easier when you already are good, but
yeah,
when it feels like you have no hope, to stick with it is almost insanity. Like to
yeah,
some people.
100%. I
Yeah.
spent most of COVID learning film photography. I right after high school, I didn't go to college, and then I went to college like a year later, and I went for film photography. But then I dropped out almost instantly. My brother passed away, so I dropped out for those reasons. But I also was like lost in that class.
Yeah.
So
And
when
I
COVID
went
hit,
to film school like probably like maybe a few years before that, and it was
yep,
very similar, and it was also very expensive because shooting on film back then was very
insane.
expensive. So it's like to
And
even commit to that, you're committing yourself to regular expenses, which sucks.
and it was fun because like years later, I went back to talk at a class in that play in at Quincy College for buddy of mine that was a professor, and like did a small little like, hi, I'm John. I've been to Chernobyl, blah blah blah. I
Yeah.
do like a bit of art, that type of thing. And at North Quincy High School, after like dropping out of film school, basically,
Yeah.
and just late. It took me finding it in a different way. I think digital photography is a beautiful thing that I never would have been able to learn lighting and stuff like that without that ease of learning curve. So
Yeah.
anyone that learned it previous, like I have buddies like my buddy Fricker, who was a film photographer, and he went to NESOP, New England School of Photography, and he
Yep.
learned on film. And that blows my mind because that was, I couldn't imagine having to write down, all right, I shot at this settings, and remembering what the day looked like at that point. All right, and that's why this photo looks like this. Not being able to just take a shot and look at the back of my camera and be like, all right, that's how it does it.
Right. And
You
that
know,
was like when I went to film school and we were shooting on 16 millimeter, it was like you got to shoot it and then you got to find out in like 2 weeks if it came out okay. And if it didn't, you really had no chance to redo it. And it's a
but you
real
had to
roll of dice.
remember why it didn't work.
Right.
Like what aspect of you fucking up was it?
Right.
And
On
hope
this
it
piece of
wasn't.
equipment that's 60 years old.
Yeah. Well, I have a medium format film camera that I like paperclip traded up for. Basically, I bought a lesser camera for like $250 and then traded, and now I have this like beautiful medium format film camera that I could sell all my digital stuff and use this for the rest of my life and be happy.
Wow.
Um, but uh, it was released in '74, so there's no electronics to it. There's not an electronic in the
Wow.
thing. It's all mechanical. I had my buddy that owns Norwich Camera Company down in Connecticut completely overhaul it. He cleaned it, looked through the bellows, did everything. It's like it's brand new that
Wow.
day, and it'll last. And the hunter could shoot with it until he's old and gray. The thing will outlast me. And it's so much fun to shoot with. And I can't tell you it. Well, I'll go out and shoot like street photography in Boston, and people are like, I have, what is that thing? I haven't seen a camera like that. And if it's like, it's typically old people like that'll be
Yeah.
like, I haven't seen a camera like that in like 40 years. What are you doing? People don't know what to expect. They don't,
Right.
because I still look like me. I know you can't
Right.
see me
Right.
currently. I'm still, I'm a six
Yeah.
foot tall kid with a backpack and a hoodie.
Yeah.
People.
We haven't changed our style much in the past.
No. I'm a creature of habit,
Me
so to
too.
speak. And they see me lugging around a brick of a camera, like what I don't know what to think of you. And
Yeah.
and also that's been my dealings with cops. Also, they find it really hard to believe that I'm just there to take a picture. They think I'm going there to steal copper or do a million
Right.
other worse things. It's like, no, I'm just a photographer. Like
Yeah.
I apparently look like the worst person on earth, but it's hard to believe I have benevolent purposes.
Yeah, I know. It is sad because it's like, you always say that anytime anybody runs into a cop, it's like it's the cops always see people on their worst day. Because if you're talking to a cop, it's usually not for a good reason. So it's like they always are assuming the worst, it seems, because
True,
most of the
true.
time it probably is the worst, but it's
Yeah,
still
I mean
like,
they do spend a life. Their life's work is getting lied to 9 times out of 10.
right, right. And I'm somebody who's doesn't want to be on record defending the cops. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna put
I
that
was
out
thinking
there
that
too.
as I was saying that, like
I'm like, I
fuck
accept
cops,
on a
but
human level how it can be frustrating, but
yeah, but they also signed up for it. Fuck the fraternity.
that's
Um,
it's funny. This is probably, I had a magazine sitting here. I don't want to say what it was, but it says in the corner, alumni, I'm not gonna say the name, was beaten by fellow Boston police officers. Now he's proud to be the city's top cop. And I'm like, that sounds like gang initiation to me. Like, and I not to
that's
make a
all it
joke
is.
of it,
Like,
but like,
well, I have friends
there's
that have.
probably more to that story, and it's like I just
Yeah,
read
of
that one
course. I
thing,
mean,
and it's just that's what stuck
there's
out to me. But
there's three sides to every story.
yeah,
There's one side, two sides, and the truth. They're a fraternity and they protect the brotherhood. That's
yeah,
always been my thing. The
yeah,
cops are a fraternity and they protect the brotherhood. And if you're
yeah,
not in it, you're not part of it. Serve and protect to a point.
yeah.
But
You ever had any Is there a big range that you say you've been arrested 5 or 6 times? Have you encountered like a different range of cops the whole time, or is it pretty much like it happens the way you think it's going to happen?
Well, I mean, my problem is I'm probably one of the few people that this day and age I still ran from cops. Like,
I did that once. That was the one time I almost got arrested. And someone's like, "You never really run because that's like admitting guilt." And I was like, "Oh, that's a good
yeah,
point."
I'm just so used to it. I've been doing it since I was 14 years old.
Yeah,
I've literally since I was in middle school, I realized I could take the bus that I took to go to middle school, the MBTA bus I took to go to middle school, that would have like junkies puking on themselves on a Tuesday morning while I'm going to homeroom
yeah.
in sixth grade. I learned that I could take the red line into Boston. So then I'm on my skateboard at Copley, skipping school, running from cops, chasing me. One cop taking out a skate tool and taking a wheel from me and telling me to go back to school. He's like, "Oh, your day's done." Took one of my wheels. He was 100% right. It took me a week to get another pair of wheels. Like it's smart fucking cop.
Yeah.
But I've been running from cops my entire life. I played 3 sports in high school. I played hockey, baseball, and I ran from cops. That's what I've told people before. So my problem is a lot of times with me, it's a property owner, so it's not,
Right.
that bad. But this is a good one. So I'm old. I'm
You're
on my
younger than
four
me though.
I on my 40th
I
birthday.
I just turned 44 the other day.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
It was on a Tuesday, and I had the day off from work, and so I was like, I know this abandoned high school, beautiful high school in Connecticut. I'm going to spend my 40th birthday shooting this incredible library. I'll show you the picture later.
It sounds familiar. I might have seen these because
It's in my recent photos.
yeah, I did
It's
see
a
that.
school library recently.
And I was like,
Um,
I couldn't believe it. There was all that stuff there.
all the books and stuff.
Yeah.
All right. It's a Tuesday morning. I get there. So I pre-dawn pretty much everything at this time. At this point, I get in and my camera's already set up as I'm watching the sun come up. I
Mhm.
wanted to get like the best light. I hate myself for it, and it's the most work, and it's the worst mornings and all that, but it makes for the best shots. Um, so 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm smoking a joint with my camera all set up in this abandoned high school library, waiting for the sun to come up, and I'm just like hanging out, looking out the window, and I see 3 all black like SUV trucks on just pull up on the corner. I'm like, that's not good. And I had already seen empty like paint casings and stuff on the ground as I was coming in through like the dark hallways and stuff like that. So I'm like, So I grab my camera and I grab the tripod and stuff, and I look out again and I can see them like putting on tactical vests. I'm like, fuck. So I instantly pack up my camera and I'm in a full sprint running out the back door of this high school as they're coming in this almost identical back door on the opposite side of the building to come in to do like live fire training, to like practice of clearing rooms and stuff like that. So I'm like diving through a hole in the fence that's like covered in barbed wire and stuff. It's still 40 degrees out. It's still pretty cold in Connecticut. I'm running a quarter to, half mile to my car that's parked far away so it doesn't like look suspicious out of place because it has Massachusetts plates. All while I'm like have a 40-pound camera bag and tripod hanging off my back, half off of me with a joint hanging out of my mouth. And I get back to my car and I'm like almost basically ready to throw up at this point. Like I'm just so exhausted from this whole like experience. And I'm like, I'm 40 years old and I'm
Yeah.
still doing this.
I know.
Like, when is enough enough? And I get home and I put my put my card and then my computer, and I'm going through it and I'm like, I'm looking at the photos and all I think is, fuck, I have to go back.
Oh, isn't it wild? Like, I
I
mean,
was
how
like,
many times have you quit and gone and then unquit in the same day? Because I have for everything I've ever done. I announced in this podcast I wasn't going to do this movie I'm working on, and later that day I was working on it. I'm still
what do
working on it.
you, what kind of movie?
Oh, well, I made this film. I made this album, Drinking Songs for Children. And I got a bunch of cool rappers on. I invested a lot of time into it and stuff. And then I decided that I wanted to make like basically a music video for the whole album, and then have like have some commercials in between. So I'm basically
Yeah,
doing a
yeah,
music
yeah,
video for each of them, and it all
yeah, yeah, yeah.
has a loose story. So I've been working on that. The album's been done for a little over a year and mastered and everything. And then the film is maybe like, I'm finally making some real progress because part of it is animated. So I did draw
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I had Pillsy up here shooting some stuff, and Nick
That's
is
awesome.
filming. So I
That's
think it's going to
awesome.
be pretty wild. So
That's great. That's great. That's a good. Is that gonna be the title for the movie too?
yeah. Yeah.
Drinking songs for children.
Yep. So
Oh, that's great. I like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I always want to do a horror movie.
Yeah, it's funny because now I'm starting thinking about, once this is done, what is possible, because it's like, well, I could probably shoot a real film if I can do this. Like, all the only thing harder is capturing sound. So I'm like, maybe you could do
Yeah,
something like that.
that's the issue is this, but you could do a lot of that in ADR and stuff like that too,
Yeah.
and through. Yeah, it's crazy what you can do. I always wanted to do a horror movie. That was the one thing I wanted to do.
I mean, there are so many, like, I
Do you have a
think
whole script written out?
well, it's really, I do, but it's not, see, most of it is not, like the commercials have to be scripted because
Yeah.
Pillsy, and I don't want to give too much away, but Pillsy and I were
Yeah,
up here.
sorry, I didn't mean
No worries, no
to.
worries. Because I'm also trying to get people to talk about it too. But
Yeah,
so he was up here. We were shooting like a parody of a commercial that used to run a lot when we were kids. So
yeah,
it was
yeah,
like
yeah,
that
yeah.
was based on that. And
That's great.
then there's different little there's a thing where some there's like pro wrestling promos, like two going back and forth like as like
Yeah, yeah,
commercials
yeah,
come
yeah,
in. So
yeah. Oh, that's great.
yeah,
That's
I
great.
think it'll be cool.
Yeah,
Roughly
that
looking.
sounds awesome.
So, but
It's
I
awesome.
was able to get the role that I wanted Shock G for. I ended up getting Young Dirty Bastard for.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So yeah, that was
It was so it was funny. It was a show for Leeds one night at the Middle East, and it was um, what is it, Chris? What's Big Pun's son's name?
oh, Chris Rios, maybe.
Rivers or
Oh,
yeah,
you think you're right? Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Chris. Anyway, but I was there to shoot him and someone else, and I'm out back, and I was kind of like rushing through the sets, and like I was taking a lot of pictures because I was getting smuggled by someone that was doing fire um sprinkler head testing in a
Yeah.
building in Boston. He was putting me in like a laundry cart and smuggling me to the roof so I could shoot from the roof.
Oh my
Well, he
God.
did sprinkler tests, and I did it on his lunch break. And the security guy like kind of loosely knew, but was like gonna look the other way. But I had to meet him in like a parking garage in the basement and like get in this laundry cart, and then he put like a moving blanket on top of me and then put like tools on top of that.
Like right out of a cartoon.
It was straight up Mission Impossible type of thing. And then I got on the roof and it was like windy, and I got to shoot from the roof. It was like right next to the clock tower in downtown. And it was, I think it's like probably 40 stories high. Um but I was smoking a blunt out back, and I'm smoking a blunt with this guy, and I'm like, oh, good show tonight. And he's like, yeah, yeah, it's a good show. And then like he passes to me, he's like, have a good night. And I'm like, yeah, you have a good night too. And it all of a sudden he goes out and he does his dad's part on Beware. And I was
Then in the
smoking a
middle
blunt,
of Little Italy, little did they know they were middle men who didn't do diddly.
you know it. And I was smoking a blunt with him, having no clue who it was.
That's
And then
funny.
all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, have a good night. And then just went straight out to do like one of the best songs ever in
Oh
honor
my
of his
God.
dad. And I was like, holy shit, that was him.
That's funny.
Fucking crazy.
That actually reminded me just of something else where, so years and years back, Skippy and I, he used to do sound around Boston, and it reminded me of how easy it is to sort of get in places when you don't know you're not supposed to be there.
Yep.
Because Idea and Abilities and I think Atmosphere were playing a show at the Roxy, whatever that club is, the one where like
I went
Aaron
to one of those
Hernandez.
shows.
Yeah, he might have been at that show. And so he was like, I think my friends are doing sound, so we can just go in and see if we can get Skip in the back, go in the back. So he's like, I'm like, all right. So we just go in. There's a door open. We just walk in, walk through the things. Like, he's assuming he knows these people. And we get in the door. We go to the hallway, open the door, and we step out, and we're just right in the middle of the Roxy. And he looks around and goes, I don't know any of these people. And I was like, all right. And we got in for free. We didn't have bracelets because we couldn't drink because, we didn't go through the line. But like, we just literally just walked in like we thought we were supposed to be there, and there was not a problem.
That's so fantastic. I remember it was probably 90, 95. I was 96. I was just getting into high school. Me and two of my buddies were in Boston, just running around skating and causing a ruckus. And we walked. It was at night, and Fenway Park, one of the gates was open.
Oh,
And I mean, this is before like cell phones, anything.
right.
Like I had to be home when the street lights came on. Those type of years. And the gate was open, and we could see straight out onto the field. So we ran out onto the field, and we started running around the bases until someone over the loudspeakers yells, "Hey, you little fucks, get off the field!" And we just like and ran out of Fenway Park. And like I couldn't imagine doing that now. Like you
Right,
get in
right.
so much trouble
I
now. Like
know.
back then, it was just like something we did and we laughed about for years later. I'm still laughing about now,
Yeah, I know.
30
That's
years
still a
later.
great story.
Like, and I couldn't like
That guy
because I
probably loved yelling at kids every night too. It's
yeah,
probably a great story for
absolutely.
him.
Yeah, he's probably telling his kids the same story.
Yeah.
They're in their 60s. It was just so, hey, fuckers, get off the field. And we were just running around on skateboards. It was so funny.
Like, hey, don't leave the door open.
Yeah, exactly. Don't leave when the keg's getting delivered. Don't leave the gate
Yeah,
open.
I know. It is pretty wild. Good Lord. So, all right. We've been going for like over an hour at this point. Anything coming up you're working on that you want to like shout out, and I mentioned that book that I'm gonna try to track down and order later on
Yeah, I
tonight.
appreciate
But
that.
and you made it. I was trying to find it. So I think I tagged you originally because I was wearing the shirt that you made a few years back, and then I was gonna bring it with me today, but I think it's actually in a bag I packed because I wanted to use it for part of my film, so it might make an appearance in there. So
Oh, that's awesome. I'm
might
glad
be
to hear
hearing from
that.
the clearance people. But the
Oh, you have my complete. Okay.
all right, it's on tape now. So
Yep.
and so like I love all your stuff. I bought my dad he was a big Volkswagen guy. He's been working on Volkswagens forever. I bought
Oh,
him one of
nice.
the VW Graveyard, which he loves.
Oh, I heard that guy, the owner of that place, who I went, in an early morning trip, but I heard that guy just recently passed away. So rest in peace
Oh,
to that guy. He had a crazy collection there that a lot of photographers went through, and I know I'm sure some people stole from, unfortunately, but that was his like collection of stuff. I heard that place will probably be gone in the next like couple of years. That
bad.
they'll get rid of it. But I heard that guy just passed away, and
There's a chance my dad might even know him because my dad knows my dad's been in the
I
VW
would
since the
imagine
60s.
that's
He
like a
knows
small
everybody.
world. Like,
Yeah, like my
and
dad
that
has
and
every issue of Hot VW like ever put out.
and
Like,
and that that's it's like urbex photographers. It's a subculture of a subculture of a
yeah,
like like there's I'm sure that's not the biggest net to throw out. I bet you
right.
they've bumped elbows before.
Yeah, my dad he has a hot rod that he races up at New England Dragway and stuff like
Oh,
that.
that's awesome.
He's someone who got sober and then he'd always been into whatever, but then once
Yeah.
he got sober, it became his pet project, and it's like I was like, oh wow, like
Are they
you are
bugs?
yeah, it's I'm like you
Yeah.
are legit putting all the same energy you put in this as you did to drinking because you're doing a kick-ass job.
Yeah,
Like,
my buddy that was, he was 10-year recovering heroin addict. He went from doing drugs to being like one of the most successful people I know. And it's all like he put the same energy he used to get getting high into like being a like successful person. And
yeah.
it's just crazy to see it work the other way as well.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because the older my dad said to me, he's like he got sober in like his late 50s. He's like, if you have a problem, deal with it now. Don't wait until you're my age because it gets harder every day to deal with it. And it's
Oh,
just
absolutely.
you
It
know,
just compounds.
yeah, it does. It's like, and every night that you go to bed having drank too much is one more night of bad sleep that's going to snowball into another bad day. Because I
Yep.
don't drink anymore. I was never a huge drinker, but like I was more of a gray area drinker, and like, but I haven't drank for a while, and it's like it would be that community that effect of not drink. I wouldn't drink 20 beers a night, but even having a few, and every night I got one worse night's sleep, and then my brain wasn't functioning.
I was never a big drinker because my dad and his dad were big drinkers. My dad was sober the last 30 years of his life, but
It helps.
I
Yeah.
do. I was very young and remember him as being not the nicest drinker, but I've always been a smoker since you couldn't be a smoker. I'm. I mean, I did acid a couple weekends ago at a festival. I'm more
I'm not
that
above any
guy.
of that stuff either.
I did acid and mushrooms at a festival a couple weekends ago, and if I'm at a show, I'm not. A lot of times, I will have a beer just so people ask you why you're not drinking.
Yeah.
I'll like nurse one beer the entire time, or if I'm shooting and I have drink tickets or whatever, I'll have a beer just so everyone's like, "Hey, you want a beer?" I got one, thank you. Like I'm not a big drink. It's just not really enjoyable to me for whatever reason. I've never really been a big drink, and it runs in my
Yeah.
family as not. My dad was an alcoholic. His dad was an alcoholic. It's just us Moonies aren't good with the drinks.
I get neither of the Johnsons. I went to this large Professor and J Live show that was out here the other day, and like I took a little mushroom chocolate like a little bit before, and
Yeah,
like it was just the perfect level of mellow. And it was like, and I think my girlfriend had like one drink, and I was
yeah,
just like, oh, this is so much nicer than the way it used to be. Like,
yeah,
I mean, you definitely
absolutely.
like you don't have that when it comes to be like 10 and 10:30 when the alcohol would be kicking you to another gear of like
Yep.
whatever. You have to know you have to walk away at that point and just go to bed because
I,
the
I've
gears
never
might
had
kick in.
any enlightening thoughts on drinking alcohol. I've definitely had more than a share on mushrooms
Right. And it's like
and
the
other.
alcohol doesn't make anybody a better person from my experience, you know.
No, no, better looking, but not
Yeah,
better.
that's true. Yeah. There's that, but fortunately that works if someone else uses it.
I don't have anything to promote. I'm just always doing my trespassing thing and like Trespassion on pretty much anything. I got the website. Yeah, just pretty much doing my thing. But I'll do another book eventually, maybe something bigger and more of a compendium of images I'd like to do, um like a coffee table type book.
Yeah, that would be really cool because the images are really breathtaking. They deserve to be seen. And I heard you sort of muttering in the background of the Chernobyl video, like I didn't fly halfway around the world to get pictures of people in the background. And I'm like looking at these shots and I see one little person moving in the background. I'm like, oh, that would drive me wild too.
Absolutely. Well, so it was the bumper cars, and I got
Yes,
there,
that's
and it
what it
was
was.
it
Yeah.
was they were doing time lapse with like a table type thing. They had two tripods set up, and they were doing like long exposure time lapses. And I know how long those take. They can take hours, And I was nice to them at first, but like, and I shot the Ferris wheel and stuff, and we were about to move to another area and I'll probably never be there again,
Right.
and so like I'm not getting the chance to not shoot the bumper cars. Like I walked over there completely ready to ruin whatever the hell they were doing with no like regard for I'm sorry. I don't know. I was full of piss and vinegar at that moment. I was getting my shots and moving
Yeah.
on because I wouldn't have the chance to go back. But I wasn't doing something that was going to take more than 20 seconds.
Right. So wait,
Uh,
just quickly on that, were there that was an amusement park that never opened, right? That was supposed to open not long
that was
before the disaster.
so that was a carnival they set up for the May Day festival. That the disaster happened on the 28th or the 26th, and it's May 1st that they do that. And so they were setting it up for that, and then it was just a
Oh, it
carnival.
was the
So
28th of April. That was my birthday.
yeah, 28th of April, 28th or 26th.
That's funny.
Yeah. Um, and so they set that up for the May Day fair, and it just never went away. It was like Fiesta Carnival like setup
Yeah,
just for
someone
the
lost their deposit on that for sure.
well. The only time it was used is they used it to keep the kids busy while they were filling up the evacuation buses.
Oh, shit.
Mind you, they had already been set up for days and absorbing radiation from the leaking
Oh,
reactor because radiation is stored in metals and stuff like that. So the kids sitting on those metal seats and stuff like that, where I'm sure anyone that was sitting on those rides were exposed to high levels of radiation.
oh, I just thought, have you ever been to that abandoned Wizard of Oz park?
The one in Virginia, I
I
believe.
think it's somewhere around
I
that
think it's
area.
in Virginia. I've a buddy of mine shot those kind of famous foggy shots of the yellow
Yep.
brick road, if that's what you're thinking of. This kid
Yeah.
Johnny.
I went down a whole
I've
rabbit hole on that one day.
yeah, that's a
And
cool
it's been
spot.
revived a little bit over the
I
years.
was
They
gonna say I
actually
don't know
do
if it's
official
still
events there now.
abandoned at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it gets bigger every year what they do with it. But it seemed like
yep,
it's just like I remember Return to Oz. I saw that in a theater in the second grade, and it
yep.
pretty much fucked up my next 5 or 6 years of sleep. Like along with like Dark Crystal and the woman who gets sucked in the end of the computer of Superman 3, like that really like just messed me up. And when I saw those images, it was like that come to life. You're just like,
yeah. He that kid Johnny does really good work. There's so much stuff down in Virginia and West Virginia and stuff. I get worried down there because that's really like shoot first type of
yeah.
area. They're gonna They're not going to talk to you. They're going to shoot off their shotguns in
Especially
the
if you have
air.
a Massachusetts plate.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. They're not even going to shoot in the air at that point.
Yeah, shit.
Goddamn, goddamn city slickers.
I know. It is sad though. I mean, maybe it was like that too in years, and we just didn't know it because the world was a bigger place. But I mean, there are parts of this country where I'm just like, I can't really go there and dress the way I dress and whatever. And it's like, if I can't do that, why would I want to do it? Like,
I and it's well, I feel a little bit differently like than that because as it's weird because I grew up a skateboarder and as, as a skateboarder, you can almost go anywhere in the world and find people to
That's a good point because I,
chill
I didn't
with.
have that sort of camaraderie in like a group that I belonged in until later in my life because I was a
Uh,
very much a loner kid. So that's
I
nice.
I'm very I feel very lucky in that aspect. I've been to Puerto Rico, I've been to, Washington, I've been to California, and riding a skateboard down the street and like just being in that type there's such a
Yeah,
and now more than ever because when I grew up there was a real like me versus you type of skateboarding. Now everyone is like girls, boys, all color, like
yeah,
all walks of life are in it too. And when I was growing up, it was a white guy's sport, you
yeah.
know,
And it
and
was
it
people that were
now,
sort of intimidating. It was almost like the movie Kids. It felt like
yeah,
that you're on the outside looking in.
and I wanted to live that so much, like so much of that movie was everything I
That
wanted to be
movie
growing up.
shook me to the foundations. Like to this day, I still, and that's one of those movies you watch now. It's more disturbing as back then because now you're like, oh, they actually are kids.
I know, but Casper was like the coolest,
I know he
like
was so cool.
I I stole 40s rolling my parent legs up in New Hampshire at a spot, when I was
It made it
probably
look so
17 years
easy.
old. He made it look so easy and I just went and did it like I thought he did it. It was just normal.
Yeah,
Um but that was such like a and so in that community like you can go you could not even speak the same language and go ride a skateboard and meet somebody and just have that almost camaraderie with and I I feel like you could. It's a cheat code almost in the world because you can go anywhere and meet someone. You can almost like crash on couches and
right.
stuff through it. Like you can make lifelong friends through it. There's definitely a different camaraderie in that. So I have never and admittedly I've never felt that in anything else I've done.
Right. There's got to be a little bit of real recognized real to that because it's like if you watch somebody for 5 minutes, you can pretty much tell, general idea how good they are. And if they're at least average, they're the type of person who puts work into things. And if they're that type
Exactly.
of person, they're
Yeah.
usually a pretty decent human being,
I'm gonna play you in a game of skate, and I'm either gonna beat you or you're gonna beat me, but there's gonna be a mutual respect found in it.
Right.
And if we can, talk shit to each other and have a little fun, it's all the better. Like there is a definitely real recognized, real mutual, like, all right, I could see what you could do. Like, this is what I could do type of thing. And now more than ever, it's not combative. It's more like a mutual like respect, honestly. And it's beautiful. It's great. It was in the
Yeah.
fucking Olympics, is the last one.
I know. And we're at breakdancing in the next Olympics, which I'm very excited for. I cannot wait to see what some of the other countries are going to bring for breakdancing. That's going to be insane.
Now see that that's so weird to me because how do you judge skateboarding?
I assume it has to be
It's
similar to how the way they do like figure skating or something. That's
and
the only
like
thing I compare it with.
interpretive floor routines and stuff
Yeah.
like that. That's how they'll
I mean,
have to.
in the end, they judge it on how the ratings it gets because that's what they wouldn't be bringing it in if they didn't want to get more people to care about the Olympics. So it's
Yeah,
like, if people watch it, they'll find a way to make it interesting, I guess.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's so tight because I've always, as much as I talk about skateboarding as a sport, I've always believed it's more of an art form than anything else because it's two people could do a kickflip and they can both technically be good. I can have my opinion about which one's better, but I'm not necessarily right.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
There's not like
you
a
could
point
play.
system. I mean, you play like
Yeah,
skate, like you said, but it's like that
yeah,
was essentially like horse for
yeah, yeah,
skating.
and that's. I mean, we can both do kickflips, but one can look better, and like where's the value in that? Style is paramount to anything else in skateboarding, in my opinion, and that is an unquantifiable thing in it. Like
Yeah.
it's tough, but that should be interesting with breakdancing. I didn't realize that's going to be in the next one. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's wild. So, I don't know if it's a team sport or if it's individual one-on-one or both, but I gotta dig that up. But you
They
know,
should be doing both, in my
yeah.
opinion.
Because if anybody who hasn't spent a few minutes Googling just breakdance videos, like just some of the stuff out there is ungodly. And you think about what you do if you have if you had a sponsor and you had like, a year to train, like they'd be spinning
like
on a finger. It's
ungodly, like acrobatic type of things. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow, that's gonna be cool.
Yep. So all right, we're hitting about 90 minutes here, so I don't want to eat up too much of your time and too much of these listeners' times. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, man. It's like I just definitely hit you. I mean, I don't know. You probably don't do a whole lot of commissions, but do you do any or?
Well, I have my kids pretty much every weekend, if not every other weekend. So I stopped doing weddings and stuff like that because that's typically when those are. And my kids are 10 and 8 now, so they want to hang out with me and stuff now. And about 4 years maybe they're gonna want to be doing their own things. So
Yeah, so enjoy it.
I'll make the money. I'll make the money then. I'm enjoying the time with them now. They're gonna. Dad won't be as cool in 4 or 5 years, so
Yeah.
I'm taking my cool time now. But I'm not really doing commissions. I've just kind of been shooting when I can and working as much as possible.
All right. Well, I'm sure go to his website. I'm gonna try to track that book down.
Trespassion on pretty much any social media, and you'll find me.
Yep, and we'll have that up the entire time here too with your social information.
I made up the word, so
yeah. Fine. And it's funny because I remember one day I hit you up. I was sitting at my desk and I was looking at it and I was like, it looks like the French for Trey and then passion, like Trey mean French and passionate. And I felt like a genius. Like, did he think of that? Because it was like the TRS was in red and the rest was in a different.
It was legitimately like some like BS hip hop stuff. I was driving around at work, and I had just been like John Mooney photography before that, and it was driving me nuts. I was like, I don't want to be fucking John Mooney photography.
And desolate photography doesn't really like
no,
that's not going to sell to my.
So I was, I had already started doing like the bando stuff, so I'm like just messing with the word trespass in my head, and I'm like trespassing.
No one's thought of that yet. Sweet.
I remember exactly where I was in traffic on my way home from work, and I could tell you where I was between, Furnace Brook and the Milton exit on the highway, stuck in traffic when I thought of it. And it was just like such a revelatory moment, and I'm like, I just instantly knew that's what I was going to run with, and awesome. No one else had it. It wasn't like anywhere else. I've seen it I've seen Trespassionate is another one. I've seen other ones. I don't know if they've gone off of my thought, but it just worked when I thought of it. I was just like, that's so good.
Yeah, that's a great feeling. Every once in a while, I have that thing where I get myself, it only happens like twice a year, but I give myself like repetitive stress disorder from patting myself on the back because I come up with something like, I'm like, yes.
I don't want to tear my rotator cuff on it, but yeah, it was one of my better thoughts.
Right. But there are times to do it for other people where I hear something else and I'm just like, oh, that line's been that like punchline's been sitting there for 30, 50 years of hip hop and no one's grabbed it. I could have, but this.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, I appreciate it. I had a blast. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, man. All right, I'll talk to you.